Hello everybody, Mrfox here, and welcome to the Dota 2 Academy. Today we're doing Basics 103. Congratulations, you have made it. Here's our overview in case you need to see it again. Today we're going to go over items, status effects, disables, crowd control, and dispels. Pretty much all follow under the status effects information, but I like to be a little bit more specific, I guess you could say. All right, before we get into items and status effects and everything that we kind of need to know, we need to know about health, mana, attributes, armor, resistance, damages. And so this is kind of the overview, right? So armor, sometimes called physical resistance, reduces the amount of physical damage received by a unit. The higher the armor value, the higher the reduction in physical damage. Every hero has a base armor value, which can be increased directly by items, talents, or indirectly by increasing the agility attribute of a hero. Abilities and effects can reduce a unit's armor value, potentially going negative, making them take increased damage from physical attacks. Alright, I know, a lot of words, but really what it means is this helps protect you from physical damage. Somebody hitting you with their right click. Okay, now magic resistance is a flat percentage value that reduces incoming magic damage to a unit. Heroes have a default magic resistance of 25%. So if I were to use an ability that says damage type magical, magic resistance will help reduce that by a flat percentage. Okay, now on the flip side of these, we're looking at the types of damages right underneath, which is physical damage. Most common source of physical damage are basic attacks. However, many actively casted abilities also use physical damage. One example of this would be Witch Doctor's Totem. Okay, hero takes the damage that your hero takes can be reduced by increasing your armor. Now, magic damage, the most common source of magic damage, are active abilities cast by heroes. For example, Lion's Finger of Death is magical damage, and that can be reduced by magic resistance, which we talked about above. Now, pure damage is a small number of abilities that inflict pure damage, which is applied directly to the affected unit and ignores both armor and magic resistance. So that does a flat amount of damage no matter what the resistance is. Okay, now we do have to keep in mind BKBs can do a decent chunk to pure damage. Okay, and we'll talk about that when we get into items. Okay, now on the right hand side, or maybe your left, no, it should be right, is health. Health determines how much damage a hero could take before they die. And you need to know that each point of your strength increases your health. And then mana determines how many abilities a hero can use. Each point of intelligence increases a hero's maximum mana and their mana regen. Okay, so strength, health, agility, armor, and attack speed, and intelligence is mana regen, and a little bit of magic resistance. Okay, so you need to know those when you're picking your hero and as things go along. Certain heroes, if you're an agility based hero, in general you'll gain more agility the more levels you get. If you're strength-based heroes, most of the time you're gonna gain more strength the more levels you get, and same with intel. So if you are picking somebody and you know that you're gonna be going against a lot of heavy physical damage, you might want to get an agility-based hero in general. And here we go. All right, here we are on a very fun thing called the Dota 2 Fandom Wiki. Alright, this goes over a lot of the status effects that you can be affected by. The most basic one is going to be the stun. And I'm going to read these, to be honest with you, just because they're straightforward, okay? So unit is unable to move or perform any actions. Shackle is the same as a stun, but it requires attacking a hero to channel the effect. One main example of this could be Shadow Shaman. He has a shackle. A stun can be a lot of different people. Vengeful Spirit, for example, has a magic missile. It stuns. Now, Root is something that makes it so that you're unable to move, but you can perform certain actions. Okay? one example of this could be Treant Protector's ultimate. Okay, now leash, a unit is unable to move outside a limited range but can perform some actions. It's very similar to a root, but you pretty much could do everything that you could otherwise, except you're stuck to a certain location. There's two kind of leashes, one or two in general that you'll see. There's Puck's leash, which is the ultimate. So once you get to the end of that limited range, you'll get stunned if you were to break it. And then you can look at Grimstrokes, which will leash you to a teammate. Now, a Hex, a unit is transformed into a critter and is unable to perform any actions except move at a slow pace. Some Hexes increase the damage taken as well. So that's good to know depending on what heroes can do that type of Hex. Shadow Shaman's Hex, I believe. We just had 7.34 E drop today, and I think it went down from 1.5 or increased from 1.3 damage, increased to I believe 1.5. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. Now, Cyclone unit is swept in the air where it is invulnerable but cannot move or perform any actions. I think there's only two things that do this. It's the Eul Scepter, and then of course what the Eul Scepter builds into. Now, a hide and a banish, a unit is temporarily removed from the game map and cannot be damaged or affected by any other mechanics. This legitimately means like you're gone, like you don't exist on the map, and that would be Outworld Devour will do that, and then there's one more person, Shadow Demon, and it says by any. Cannot be damaged or affected by any other mechanic. That is not necessarily true. There are a few things that can, and that would be very specific to Outworld Devour and to Shadow Demons. Next is Hide or Banish. You just temporarily remove from. Oh, sorry. Excuse me. Next is Blind. A unit has a chance to miss basic attacks. In general, these are actually pretty high, but the type of blind will identify what that percentage is, and it could change based off levels of certain characters. Next is something that you'll see often, which is a silence. A unit is disabled from using any of their abilities, but they can still use their items. Now, mute is opposite, where you aren't able to use any of your item abilities, but you can use your unit abilities. Break is on the other side, where a unit's passive abilities are disabled. So there's three kind of ranges of having your abilities disabled. Now, a disarm is something that you cannot attack, but you can still use abilities. I can keep giving examples. Like, for example, this would be a Heaven's Halberd item. A slow, a unit's movement speed is reduced. Most slows end after a set time, while other slows gradually decrease. Just depends on the mechanic, to be honest with you. Venomous Gale is one example that you can see from... Oh goodness, there's so many years now, I forgot his name. Venomancer, wow, it's even in his name. Trap, units movement is restricted by pathing blockers, but can still perform actions. Units try to path around them if possible. I believe the best example of this would be the Bramble from Dark Willow, which is kind of something that's set down, and then if you walk into it, it then, in a sense, can root you, stun you, or do some other type of item. Movement restricted. That's kind of the biggest thing. Now, barrier units movement and several sources of force movement are restricted by barriers, but can still perform actions. Units do not try to path around them. Manual guidance is required. Let's actually see an example of this. A barrier. Ah, yes. There we go. Arena of Blood. I was thinking about saying the arena, but I was thinking of a few other things. But here we are. Kinetic Field and Soulbind and Slark. Soulbind I would mostly call a leash, though. Interesting. Same with Pounce. It even says leash. I think the big two that I would think of when you're looking at a barrier is going to be Disruptor, Kinetic Field, and Mars Arena Blood, though. All right, back to it. Taunt, unit is forced to attack a certain target, ignoring player input. Fear, a unit is forced to run away toward their team's fountain, ignoring player input. So this actually, it's interesting because I thought, yeah, Sinister Gaze. It's walking towards the caster. I would say it does say towards the fountain, but there's actually 3 different types. There we go. The Fountain Fear, the Caster Fear, and the Hypnotizing Fear. So that's good to know. Okay. Which type of fear kind of can matter depending on like how you want to position things. All right. Now a taunt, we can look at it just so that you know. It's really gonna be just a few of these, right? The duel is gonna make you attack. Axe is gonna make you attack. Huskard's life ray forces target to attack, and then Enchantress forces all nearby creeps, ally, and enemy neutrals to attack. So those are kind of the biggest ones. And then Winter's Wyvern's Winter Curse is a very specific type of taunt. So just knowing that it makes you attack a certain person or item is good to know. Forced movement, you're just forced to move in a certain direction, ignoring player input. We can look at this, but I'm guessing it's going to be the Force Staff, or it's going to be Rubik's Throw. Oh, and Meat Hook. Okay. Cyclone, upward movement. Abilities to cancel force movement. Cool. Oh, here's some examples. Clockwork when he pushes your cogs. Storm when he throws the that's interesting how it says periodically moves Brewmaster. Anyways, Vacuum, you can look at all these if you really wanted. Again, the wiki is really useful, and that's why I'm kind of diving into a few of these, just because some of them you might be like, I don't really understand them very well. So seeing some examples can kind of jog your memory of like, oh, that's exactly what it is. Teleporter Blink, unit moves to location instantaneously. I don't really think there is very many that can go against an enemy. The closest one I can think of would be X marks the spot, and I don't even know if they would count that as a blink. Glimpse is, yeah, and then X marks the spot. The rest are mostly going to be for yourself. Interesting that this is considered a blink. Teleports can be considered blinks, because you even see the teleport, scroll, and things like that. There you go. There's another fun fact that you might not have known. Teleport. Oh, it falls under teleport / blink. Duh. All right. Invisibility unit cannot be seen by normal vision. This is kind of what we talked about in Basics 101, where you have to have true sight, and that's what it says here. It must be detected by true sight. Phase. Unit can move through other units, ignoring collision size. The biggest one of these is going to be Phase Boots. I'm curious if it shows any other. Oh, okay. A lot of the ones that you're invisible for, which makes sense. Interesting. So while he's doing that casting, you can walk through it. Well, here's some fun facts for you. And while you play these heroes, you can kind of like get a feel for it. You'd be like, huh, I can walk through people. That's nice. Invulnerability cannot be damaged by physical attacks. This is mostly what you're gonna see for. This is a hide. That's weird. There's quite a few options here. Although I don't like, most of these aren't very specific. Anyways, one thing to keep in mind is looking at the towers. They can be considered invulnerable. Actually, the barracks more like it are the T4 towers. All right. Spell immunity. Unit cannot be targeted or affected by most spells. What examples do you have for us here? Oh, interesting. Snowball, Juggernaut, Lifestealer, Infest, Dawnbreaker, Solar Guardian, Juggernaut, So Flash, and Terrorblade Reflection. All right. Back to list. Attack immunity. Unit cannot be attacked. Already launched attack projectiles cannot harm or affect the unit. Unit is still affected by physical spell damage. Most likely this is going to be similar to an ethereal blade. Yep, ethereal, non-targetable, miscellaneous, non-targetable. Here's some most unselectability sources also grant attack immunity. Good to know. Back to ethereal. Ethereal, of course, I hit a button. Ethereal is a unit assumes a ghostly form, becoming immune to physical damage, but takes much more magical damage. Ethereal units are disarmed and attack immune. So you can't attack, you can't be attacked by physical damage. Excuse me, not physical damage, but by physical attacks. But you can see that magical damage can do quite a bit. Here's some examples. And here's some sources. And that's kind of about it. Okay. So now you're affected by one of these status effects, right? How can you get out of them? Well, there's something called Dispels. Okay. So a basic Dispel is a simple Dispel granted by abilities and items. Each type of status effect can potentially be dispelled, okay, unless it says undispellable or can be undone by a specific type of dispel. Okay, so there's the basic dispel. There's spell immunity. Some forms of spell immunity provides a basic dispel when activated. So if you were to activate a certain item, it would then dispel by using a spell immunity. Okay, and then strong dispel, a greater dispel that removes more status effects granted by a handful of abilities. And then there are removable buffs and removable debuffs down to dispels. So we have basic, strong, spell immunity, removable buffs and debuffs. What you really need to know is just kind of like basic dispels are going to get rid of some of the easy items, easy kind of things that you're affected by, while a strong dispel is going to give you more and more. Okay, spell immunity is when you use a certain item that grants spell immunity. It also comes with a basic dispel. I believe BKB would be a good example of that, and we can go into items soon. And then there's buffs, removable buffs, and removable debuffs. They could be removed by various forms of dispel, which is generally going to be that basic dispel, and then removable debuffs, a list of debuffs that can be removed by various forms of dispel. It's pretty simple. So by using a dispel, you can potentially get rid of buffs, debuffs, and most likely other things similar to roots, stuns, silences, depending on those types of root spells and silences. Okay. And that's going to be everything. So we're going to go over into Dota 2. We're going to go into our Learn tab. Okay. Swing on over to items. And now we are going to go over items. It's going to be pretty simple. What I want to talk about is early game items and key items that you probably need to think about. Okay. So items can be divided into 3 different sections: basics, upgrades, neutrals, and kind of a fourth of the secret shop items. However, these aren't finished items. Secret shop items are always pretty much going to be part of a bigger item. As you can see, Ring of Health, Void Stone, these are in the bottom right corner, just in case you aren't looking, right next to my picture. Your video feed is going to be kind of what all these things build into. So as you can see, none of them are the final item. They're just core in bigger items. And then you can kind of notice how these things build into certain things depending on what their attributes are. With that being said, let's swing back into the beginning of a game. Okay. So we started the game and we're going to look at consumables. Every time you die, you get a free town portal scroll. So be careful. Sometimes, especially if you're coming back to Dota and you're used to buying one every time you die, they cost more and you get a free one when you die. So I want you to keep in mind that if you die, you probably have one. There's plenty of times where people are running around 5, 6, 7, 8 of these if you're dying a lot but you're not using them. And then sometimes you end up with 5, 6, 7, 8 of these. If you die, buy one, die, buy one every time. And now you're accumulating the one that you get from death and the one that you bought. So keep that in mind. Okay, we're going to look at the early game consumables. So there's the Clarity that will give you mana regen once you use it, 6 mana regen. There's the Fire Fury, which is instantly 85 health, but more kind of in line with the Clarity is going to be the Healing Salve, which grants 30 health regen to the target for 13 seconds. You can cast almost all of these items onto an ally. So if you want to give a friendly a Clarity, you can click that item and then click the person. It's going to be pretty much the same for all these. Now, Smoke of Deceit is going to be something that we haven't talked about that is very specific to vision. Okay, so I'll read it real quick, and then we can kind of go over it a little bit more in depth. So it turns the caster and all allied players and controlled units at a 1200 radius invisible and grants 50% bonus movement speed for 45 seconds. While the casters still disguise, any allies that come within 300 range of them will also get the buff applied to them. Each smoke can only be applied once to allies. Attacking or moving within 1025 range of an enemy hero or tower will break the invisibility. Now this part at the end is very important. Disguise grants invisibility that is immune to true sight. So, it can only be broken by a hero. Okay? It cannot be broken by units. It cannot be broken by true sight. It can only be broken by a hero. It can't even be broken by an illusion. Okay? So, knowing that, it is a very important tool that people be like, let's smoke and do insert whatever. Probably a good idea. Okay? Now, we've already gone over the wards. An observer ward is free. And a sentry ward is 50 gold. But when you kill an observer ward, you get money. So that's always nice. The mangoes are similar to the Fire Fury, where it gives you, while you have it, additional buff of plus 0.4 health regen, while the Fire Fury instantly restores 85 health. That gives you plus 2 damage consistently. And then that active ability of eating the mango gives you 100 mana. The range is just what you can cast it on for your allies. Healing Salve, already talked about. Tangos, these are consumable. And what they do is you eat a tree and you gain 7 health regen for 60 seconds. Consuming an iron wood tree doubles the heal amount. Comes with 3 charges, can be used on an allied hero to give them 1 tango. So you might be like, what the heck's an ironwood tree? An iron branch creates an ironwood tree. So this happy little tree that lasts for 20 seconds can then boost your tango. So if you are not planning on turning your iron branches into what they can be built into, which is only a magic wand, it could be quite useful to buff your tango. Okay? Some people don't know that. Now you know it. Okay? You can also use them on an allied hero. You give them 1 tango, and then they can eat 1 tree and get that bonus. One thing I forgot to mention is that the Clarity, if the unit is attacked by an enemy hero or Roshan, the effect is lost. That's going to be the same for the Healing Salve. So if you see somebody who's being affected by one of these, it'd be a good idea to pop it if it doesn't put you into too much risk, like if you aren't going to die. Alright. Over to the Blood Grenade. This is also consumable. You throw a grenade at a target area. The enemies in the area will take 50 damage on impact and be slowed by 15% and take 15 damage every 1 second for 5 seconds. So total of 75 damage over 5 seconds. So what happens is if you get pretty low, or you get someone pretty low, I mean, you're gonna throw this at them. You take 75 damage. That's why in red it's 75. You take a little bit of damage, but you also are going to be damaging them by 75, and you'll be slowing them, allowing you to potentially hit them again. That range, as you can see, is 30 seconds, and it has a cooldown timer of 10 seconds, so you just can't be lobbing grenades at people. There's also a limit into the shop. I believe there's 3 of them at the beginning, and they just refresh every 2 minutes. Couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Go ahead and again throw that in the comments if you can remember. Feel free to correct me. Bottle, that's gonna mostly be used by your mids because it has a lot of different effects. It's very helpful for restoring health and mana, and it's over a very arbitrary number of 2.7 seconds. Similarly, it can be broken if you're being attacked by a hero or Roshan. It automatically refills whenever you're at the fountain. You can use it on other people, and then what's really cool is it can store a rune, and when you use that rune, it'll refill the bottle. It says using a stored rune fully refills the bottle. The bottle has 3 charges when it's full, but you actually only get 2 depending on what rune you pick up. So keep that in mind. It does say fully, but that isn't necessarily true. Alright, Aghanim Shard, that's just a consumable. You're not going to really be using it early game, but your attributes you will see. Some good things to know is that a circlet's going to build into these 4 main mid-ish game items. Early-ish mid, right? So the Bracer is going to be for strength-based heroes that you gain more strength. Your Wraith Band's going to be for those agility heroes, you gain more agility. And then you have the Null Talisman, which increases intelligence for the intelligence-based heroes. They all come with a little bit of a different boost. The Bracer comes with health regen and damage. The Wraith Band comes with attack speed and armor. And then the Null Talisman comes with mana bonus and mana regen. If you were to hold Alt, you can see kind of how these all translate, kind of above here. How they all translate based off of that gain in strength. Kind of going back to the slides we showed earlier where it said like this much strength gives you this much health per point. That's kind of what these are showing you. It's a relatively new feature that Dota added. God, I couldn't even tell you when it was added, but it's good to know that you can do that. See, so plus 2 attributes, you get this much mana, this much armor, this much health, and this much damage. Now, knowing that, if you are this type of hero, that most of the time the cores are going to be building this. If you need that mana bonus, you need that mana regen early on, 500 gold. If you're a support or somebody who's a caster, that could be pretty important. Plus, you also get those intelligence bonuses of 60.25, and then they scale with time. Double as bonuses after 25 minutes. So these kind of are good to have in your inventory. So good that some pro players in TI were rocking 2 of these relatively mid to late game. Alrighty. Now we're going to look at the other side of these. So the Bracer is made with Gauntlet of Strength. The Slippers build into the Wraith Band. And the Mantle of Intelligence builds into the Null Talisman. One thing to keep in mind, the Gauntlet of Strength also goes into the Soul Ring, which is kind of smart when you think about it, because a lot of the heroes that would build a Soul Ring would need that strength and armor because they are going to be those tanky characters. It's like, hey, I need to exchange some of my health for some mana. Alright. Some extra things. Crown can be useful if you need all attributes. Builds into decent amount of things as well. You can see what those build into. Each there's a smaller tiered item for each attribute, and then there's a larger one. They're all gonna be the same price, similarly to how all of these are. 1,000 for each of these. They give 10 of each of their attribute, and they build into things that are kind of useful for that type of hero. It's like they did it on purpose. The item is very unique in the fact that it builds into some crazy things, to say the least. And you can look at those on your own time. Equipment is going to be most of the time attached to these attributes to build things. One thing to keep in mind is infused raindrops. They're very unique, and they can be useful in certain situations. What they do is they passively block magical damage, consumes a charge to block 120 magic damage from damage instances over 75. Comes with 6 charges. When the charges are gone, the item disappears. So this is nice if you need mana regen. And what is really cool is it blocks these. So if you were to go against a Zeus who's going to be using his ultimate and you're afraid that that can affect you, but you need a little bit of mana regen, it's not a bad idea, and you know you're going against magic damage, it's a thought that you can keep in mind. Over here, miscellaneous, it really is just kind of that. It's relatively miscellaneous. Here you have things that can be pretty useful by themselves, like the Ghost Scepter, the Blink Dagger, Morbid Mask, Voodoo Mask, and even the Shadow Amulet. All these can be pretty useful by themselves. The reason why I say that is because they do specific things. Lifesteal heals the attack for a percentage of attack damage dealt. Voodoo Mask, spell lifesteal. Shadow Amulet can make you invisible. Ghost Scepter can put you into ethereal form, and then Blink Dagger can use that blink, kind of like how we're talking about with the blink blink teleportation status effect. Other than that, we're gonna move over into kind of our mid-game items. Okay. The biggest thing that I want to kind of go over for the mid to late game items is going to be movement, right? So we're going to look at Force Staff and Blink Daggers. Those are going to be pretty important to know if, like, hey, I'm struggling with movement, I need a Force Staff or a Blink Dagger, okay? Mobility is pretty important in this game, especially if you are an initiator. And some of the best ways to get that, if you don't have your own Blink, is going to be a Force Staff or a Blink Dagger. Some other key items that everybody has that is good to know about is that shard that we're talking about, upgrades an existing ability or adds a new one to your hero. 1,400 gold. It's pretty dang good. And you can get one from the Tormentor as well, just depending on if you're the lowest person. And then we can look also at the Aghanim's Scepter. This increases your ultimate and some of your abilities of all heroes. So every hero has an Aghanim Scepter upgrade. Every hero has an Aghanim Shard upgrade. And in general, they're pretty dang good. And they're worth your money. They used to be 4,100, now it's 4,200. Fun fact. Oh, I think that's because the point booster went up. No, maybe it always has been. Anyways, back to it. Getting sidetracked. Boo, boo, boo. Alrighty. Another mid-game item that I'd like to point out, or early game actually, is the boots. Boots are a must. If you are looking at those guides and you're like, I don't need boots, everybody buys boots, so they're gonna have that gain of 45 movement speed. You're gonna be slow as crap chasing somebody that definitely has one of these boots, and you're like, I can't get them. It's because you don't have boots. Okay? Boots are generally gonna be your first item, other than consumables, and then other than our item specific low tier item, or sorry, attribute specific low tier item, which would be that bracer, that null talisman, or the Wraith Band. Okay, so if you aren't building one of these, you're gonna be building boots. Okay, if you build boots, you may need to rush depending on what your characters something other than the upgraded version of the boots. Most of the time, you'll only see brown boots on people who were initiators that need that blink dagger to start fighting, right? So while you may need this to initiate and start fighting, a lot of other people, if you aren't the initiator and are not getting that blink dagger, you're going to need one of these. Okay, your guide will show you if you're starting. Okay, what they generally do is tranquil boots give you an additional 20 movement speed plus a health regen passive. Whenever your unit or hero are attacked by a unit, the bonus 14 HP regen is lost if you are attacked, and the movement speed bonus is reduced to 40 for 13 seconds. Okay, so this 13 seconds can be pretty useful. Now, your arcane boots is I'm struggling with mana. It increases your mana pool, but it also restores 175 mana to you and nearby allies every 55 seconds. It's an activatable ability. And then power treads. If you are a melee hero, increases your move speed to 55. If you're a range hero, 45. But what's really important is the attack speed. So if you need to attack quickly, you want power treads. What's really cool is the fact that you can select an attribute, which is called tread toggling, which can be useful for farming if you need more health for your character, if you need more mana to make that spell, if you need more agility for that armor. Knowing that and tread toggling can be important. Now, if you need damage, phase boots is the way to go. If you're a person who chases a lot, that can be important as well. A lot of people who want the damage are going to be people who crit, except for PA because she wants attack speed because she's an agility based hero, and the faster she attacks, the more chances she has to crit. While if you have one-time crits, you want more damage. So an example of a one-time crit would be Earth Shaker's enchant totem. He slams the ground. Now he's going to be able to have a guaranteed crit. Now he whacks the crap out of someone. That extra 12 damage now hits for a multiplicative of like say 150%. 12 times 150%, we're looking at 18-ish additional damage. Now, if you, again, don't have a guaranteed crit, you're probably going to be looking at attack speed because you want more attacks to get that crit to proc. Next is going to be Boots of Travel. You're going to see these people on people who don't have mana issues but have a lot of spells, and they want to get from one place to another often. And what they kind of do is split push, and that's going to be someone like your Lena. Axe may go Boots of Travel because he can kind of split push, and he doesn't have mana problems. But he may go phase boots if he likes to chase people if you're in taunt. So those are kind of some of the factors that you got to think about if you're playing Axe or other specific characters that may want to chase. But as you can see, your town portal scroll cooldown is reduced to 40, and your movement speed is 90. So instead of you needing to phase and increase that by 20% movement speed, 20% of 50 is what, 10? You're only going for 50 to 60 for that phase time. Well, actually, I think it's 20% of your overall movement speed, which most people end up being at what, 465. So you're getting a decent chunk. I actually think you would be going faster than a Boots of Travel person, but that Boots of Travel can still do pretty dang quick. Get you to go pretty dang quick. All right, now there's a few boots that can be upgraded to even further. Those are going to be the Guardian Greaves and the Boots of Bearing. Guardian Greaves is really valuable because there's not very many group heals in the game, and that includes, which is the mechanism, but it builds into Guardian Greaves, and just for a little additional gold, I say a little, it's 2,000 more, you can combine them all into one item. 2 items turn into one. You get a really good passive, and you get a really good active, right? So 350 health, this is 275. 200 mana, this is 175. Okay. Armor, you get additional armor. Plus 4 armor, and the Guardian Aura, this increases to 14.5 health regen and 8 armor. if obviously an allied health falls below 25%. That's pretty useful. Okay, so Guardian Greaves, you probably want one on your team. If you're not building it as a support or a position 3, you want to make sure one of the other two are. Okay. That's just my 2 cents. Do I see it in every game? No. Do I think it probably belongs in every game? Yeah. Okay. Dispel. Something to keep in mind is Manta. And what's cool is you can search what you want something to do while you're in the shop, right? So I want Dispel. I don't think this gives me Dispel at all. Why did... There we go. Really? Nothing came up. That's hilarious. I say that because the Nullifier has a basic Dispel. The Aeon Disc has a Dispel. I'm spelling Dispel right? Dispel. Whatever. But putting Dis works. Apparently writing it all the way out doesn't. But putting DIS will show you 2 of the 3 Dispels, and one of them is not Veil that I know of. Yeah, I don't see a Dispel. What I was hoping it would show is going to also be Manta style. Those are going to be those 3 kind of main Dispel items. Is going to be the Aeon Disc, the Manta, and the Disperser. Disperser can be quite expensive, but so is the Manta. This is going to be more of a support item, late game support item, because of a couple things. It's tough because a lot of cores are going to be rocking these, to be honest. Late game, you could get a Disperser for certain reasons to put on other people if you really are having things that you need to dispel. Like if there's really a bad slow that's killing you and your entire team, it might be worth looking into the Disperser. But you're mostly going to see PL build this because, or anybody who's going to want the mana break, because the passive mana break is really what you're buying it for. And then the Disperser, you get that in addition because it comes with damage and speed and the movement speed reduction. The Dispel is just bonus. Now the Manta, one of the main reasons a lot of people buy the Manta is going to be for the agility gain and then the attack speed. In addition, the Dispel can be pretty dang useful. You'll see people look at it, but it's already in most builds. And then they want the illusions most of the time. The Dispel's just additional. The Aeon Disc, you're going to see more from the supports because of the fact that it does this combo breaker. When you take damage and your health falls below 70%, a strong Dispel is rapidly applied to you. You gain 2.5 second buff that protects the 75% status resistance. It causes all damage you deal and are dealt to be reduced to 0. So this is really just to kind of, hey, let's run away, to be honest with you. The cooldown is freaking enormous though, but it's cheap. Keep that in mind. All right, that goes over our main mid-game kind of items. Late game items that I think can be quite important that we were already kind of talking about is when we start getting to these big numbers, right? Probably over 4,000 is going to be those mid to late game items, and those are when you're looking at the refresher orb. What this does is resets the cooldown of all your items and abilities, shares cooldown with the refresher shard. This item's cooldown only progresses in your hero's main inventory, so you can't put it in your backpack. Octarine Core reduces cooldown, 25% cooldown reduction to everything, spells and items. And then Sheep Stick or Scythe of Eyes turns the target into a hex. And then you just look into all of these, and honestly, I could go into all of them, but I really mostly just wanted to kind of talk about those early game items and those mid game items that could be useful. I'm sure there's more, I'm sure, right? But we're going to go into more itemization in each of our roles because items can be very specific to your role. and your character. And that's why we have those guides, right? Certain things work really well on them. But I do want to slide on over to neutral items, okay? The biggest thing to know about neutral items is the timing. This is the game time at which items of this tier are available drop. 7, 17, 27, 37. Just think 7, right? First 7, then 10, then 20, then 37. After that, the big ones are going to come out at 60 minutes, right? They want the game to end. And they're very specific to your hero. In general, though, I think other than the first one, there's going to be like lifesteal and damage together. And then like health and armor and mana. So lifesteal, lifesteal and spell lifesteal. Ooh, Pet to Edge Stores doesn't have lifesteal? Oh, it has main. None of these have lifesteal that I know of, huh? Who wants to bet that they add one? Alright. Anyways. These are going to be specific to your hero. If you feel like you highlight over, if it feels like it'll help you, go ahead and pick it. What's really cool is Dota Plus will give you a percentage on certain things. You play a hero long enough, you'll realize what can be useful. One thing I do want to say is like kind of top tier T1 item is going to be that shovel for supports. You can find a bounty rune, flask, enchanted mango, or kobold. Kobold you can use for stacking, but the passive's decent and it's okay for attacking if you're gonna just try and farm with them a little meh. But if you don't use the kobold for stacking, honestly try it. You get that bonus 30% gold and mana for stacking. You might as well just use this random thing that you got for it. But it can be useful for having those flasks and enchanted mangoes. I've even gone so far that when I start farming as Spectre and I really want those mangoes, or I'm farming, right? I want that health. I want the mana to just kind of sustain while I'm out there in the camps early on between the 7 and 17 minute mark. It's not a bad idea, right? The tributes are good, don't get me wrong, and it'll suggest this attack range, damage, and armor, which the broom handle is good as well. But every 45 seconds, I can just recharge some of that things, hop in a fight, you get the team some extra gold. It's a thought. That's all I'm saying. Seasons of Serenity. If I'm an initiator, I'm in the fights a lot, and I'm a strength-based hero, this is a decent item, increases my health. And then I can throw this down in the middle of a fight, and now my teammates are all being healed for an additional 10 regen in the middle of a fight every second, 10 extra health. Not bad. Some other key ones to look at is the Philosopher's Stone. You get extra GPM. You get less attack damage. If you're already slow in attacking, or you're a mana-based hero, intelligence, your goal is to be spell casting, it's not too bad. You get additional mana, and then you get a GPM. So I've gotten Philosopher's Stone on a lot of supports if I'm not holding on to certain things that I need. Vampire Fangs is good. A lot of people use it for the lifesteal, but it's also really good for the night vision. A lot of people don't expect you to have that extra night vision. What do we see a lot? Dragon Scale, additional armor, health regen. The pass is really cool. And then you see Aquila a lot on some of those carries that need that mana regen, and that additional armor is really good. Plus, as you can see, damage, strength, agility, all that's nice. Tier 3, this is kind of where it really is based on your hero. You'll see these kind of all get picked up by different people. A lot of people consider this Psychic Headband pretty dang good. Extra 15% intelligence, it scales. I think that's one of the reasons why. And then the cast range is really good. You see a lot of the Cloak of Flames, burns enemy units 45 damage per second, and illusions deal 30 damage per second. That's a poor man's Radiance, really. The additional damage is nice, but plus the armor. A lot of people like it for the armor while they're farming. because now you're taking less damage from these camps. You're killing them faster with the 45 damage per second. It's really good. And if you haven't seen Radiance, it's 60 magic damage, while the other one is 45. And it doesn't even say what type of damage it is, which majority of the time means it's pure or flat damage. So it might even be pretty dang on par for that flat or pure damage compared to that 60% damage. So keep that in mind. Also, one thing to point out, I know in 7.34D, at least on the tail end, right after TI, we were seeing a lot of people getting a visual effect where if you were invisible, you were still showing the burn physical effect. So, Cloak of Flames, people were buying it when there were high invisible amounts of invisible units. Like if they had a Ricky or they knew people were buying Shadowblade, some people were going Cloak of Flames. So that's a thought process that you might want to keep in mind. I haven't had an opportunity to check it out in 7.34E, and I don't know if it's a bug, but I'm thinking it is, because I wouldn't expect you to be able to see me just because I'm taking burn damage. Nowhere does it ever say when you're invisible that you're going to be slightly given visibility away. Yeah, nothing's showing it. Keep in mind they're still not going to be vulnerable unless you can see them. So they're invulnerable to right clicks and targeted by spells, but they take this consistent damage. So you can kind of follow them while you're waiting for somebody to get vision coming close to you. Or if you know they're low and they went invis and they're trying to run away from you, just like following them and they're like, how do they know where I am? It's because of that. So if you play invisible units and you see somebody building Radiance or they have Cloak of Flames, that might be the answer. Again, very niche and really interesting, but there's some fun fact for you. So that's going to be all we have for items. We went over items, those status effects, disables, crowd control, and dispels. And feel free to ask any questions. There's so many items, so many things to go over. I wanted to give you that basic overview. I can't believe it, but we've made another hour-long video. I was trying to keep this one down, and I could probably reduce it with a little bit of editing down to hopefully 45 minutes. But if not, that'll be just fine. Thank you guys for tuning in.